All right, welcome back, guys. So I have drug this premium specimen of an S10 into the shop. You can see it's very, very nice, right? So we're gonna do an install video for the S10 kit. I'm gonna go over all the parts and pieces first in this video, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and install it. I actually designed the 98 to 2005, whatever the last year the S10 is, 2003, 4. That kit is designed off of this very truck. So the rear cross member is already cut out, and there's some holes already drilled in the frame, so that makes it easy for me, which is great. So hold on, and we'll go through this thing. All right, here is a S10 hop-up kit. These are all the parts and pieces you can expect to get: bolts, hardware, all the goodies and stuff. So the 1983, I think, or 82 is the first year of the S10, and they run till 2003 or 4, something like that. I don't know exactly, so you can tell me in the comments. But the kits are separated on the website because I already had it all set up. But as it turns out, I re-engineered this bracket. The Generation 1 trucks, like up to 97, so 97 and older, these two holes line up at the rivets, the two upper rivets for the shock bracket. That's your alignment dowels for putting the C bracket in. These two bottom holes are just two extra holes. I offset them a little bit so they don't line up perfect. The bracket goes on the outside of the frame rail, so you have a guide. I added these two outer holes purely just to make it so you didn't have to drill through as much weld on the frame rails on the newer trucks, the 98 and up. So you use these two outer bolt holes for the 98 and up trucks, these two inner bolt holes for the 97 and older trucks. This bracket is exactly the same. This is the top. It sometimes fits kind of snug on the frame rail. I would prefer it to be tight than loose. And that's an explanation. There's lots of slot there to make it so you're able to get that piece to the upper cross member to line up. And I figure some guys might just weld this thing on after the fact, which is totally fine, and then this cross member is still removable. So totally up to you as far as what you want to do. So you're going to get two of these brackets in any of the kits. 1.25" 7/16 bolts, washers, nylocks. So you can see I've got that all set up. Upper shock cross member. Anti-roll bar connects there. Here's a housing and a bearing right here. Fits in there. And you're going to have 1.75" long bolts that bolt those in. Comes with a set of shock mounts. This tab width is set for 1 inch. 1 inch is like the standard bearing size for AFCO, Mensker. You kind of name it, like all the big Vikings, unless you order a wide one. All those bearings are set for that 1 inch width. Upper cross member is going to be welded. Got your 4 3/8 bolts that fasten into this guy, which we'll discuss later. Two bearing bushing housings and bearings. Welded link arms with 4130 nice rod ends, TIG welded, Merzier weld bungs, like it's super nice stuff. The lower cross member, you got your 1.5" 3/8 bolts there, the 3/8 bolts that connect it to the spring plate. So what you'll notice, zoom in here a little bit, this bolt pattern is concentric, meaning it'll go either, I guess concentric is the wrong word, but it's on a circle and it's equidistant from each other. So, but you'll notice that the bracket itself matches the pattern on the side of the spring plate. So you're going to line up these notches. That will orientate this cross member properly. You can see that notch out right there. So I've run into it a couple of times where we have accidentally welded this gusset on the bottom instead of the top, which, it doesn't matter, but it makes it confusing. Maybe you missed something, it's like, oh, well, which direction is supposed to go? This bracket sets that orientation. So that lines up right there on the spring plate. You can get these spring plates with 1/2 inch holes in them, or if you have Caltrax already, get them with the 3/4 inch holes like that. So it's just a matter of, we make these things modular, put the different bracket on there, voila, you're done. Tie down bracket, standard. I can do this. This is a regular U-bolt bolt pattern. I can do this in Smith Racecraft. I could do this in GM Multi-Leaf. Not that I think you'd ever run into that, but just let me know on that. Shock mounts go right there. I did all these billet shock mounts again. The first time I did the shock sensor hole, I drilled and tapped it for like, I can't remember the size, number 1032 or something. Well, 1032 is like bigger than all the little shock mount rod ends. So this time around, I left a boss, I drilled the hole, but I didn't tap it. So this way, whatever shock sensor you get, you're good to go, right? So we'll screw that up for everybody this next time around. For the bearing style shock, these shock mounts, I do this little NAS washer. That NAS washer makes it so the bearing doesn't dig into the aluminum spacer. So that guy bolts into there with the same size 1 3/4 bolts that these guys bolt into. So lower cross member orientation, bolts here, shock, upper cross member, and anti-roll bar. This is forward in the truck. Anti-roll bar is forward, right? These spring plates can be ordered. I don't have an option on the website, but you can just text me, call me, whatever, and email me. We can set this up with 1/2-inch holes if you want to do 1/2-inch holes. If you're gonna order this kit with the traction bars, because I make the traction bar section as well, these spring plates will have the 1/2-inch holes because my traction bars use the 1/2-inch bolt hole in the back for more adjustment. I think the 1/2-inch bolt is a better situation anyways, so they would come that way, unless you desired it to be different. So unless you like the 3/4-inch holes, which is totally fine with me. So these kits I usually have one on hand, and since it covers both trucks, it kind of works out good. But I make these usually to order, and usually it's only a couple of days. You know, I have my anti-roll bar arms all in stock. Here, I'll show you how many are in stock. Let's see. There's that many right now. Got some Blem ones down there, but there's that many in stock. It's almost time to build another run of them. So we could just make those whenever we want. This little gimbal guy is funny, huh? So there you go. So there's the overview of all the parts and pieces. The shock bolts will actually, or the shock mounts will actually look like this. They're going to come in looking like that. They'll be in a bag just like that. And then bet this video is going to be hard to follow. Then shock mounts will come in a bag like that, and then you'll have all 6 bolts for the lower cross member there, 8 3/8 bolts for the upper cross member, shock bolts, all your 7/16 bolts for there, and then spring plates. And that's a hop-up kit in a nutshell. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over, start installing things, show you a couple tips and tricks. I will go ahead and review the traction bars too. Now that we're talking about this, I'll show you the parts and pieces that go into the traction bars. So let me reset up, grab some more parts out, and then I'll be back. All right, so here's the beginning of our S10 hop-up kit video. We're going to press the bushings into the springs. So standard Calvert stuff. We just got these guys, unboxed them yesterday. You're going to have the solid front bushing up there. That's the front of the spring eyelet, Berlin style eyelet, center pin, rear eyelet. The rear eyelet is like a little small, little puny guy, so that's an easy way to kind of notice. So we already got the press set up. In my opinion, it's easiest just to use the press. Switch sides. So we suck at doing videos, so we've already pressed these bushings in and out twice, so they're not as good as they were. So it may require a little extra effort, and yeah, that is super noisy. I'm going to move this over here. So there we go. You just wait until it get a little bit of extra pressure. Like it's not even reaching 5 tons. I think it was using like 2.5. But we just let it go to 5 to make sure it's nice and seated. Flip it around. Do the other side. And then after that, we'll go over and we're going to go and drill these things out to make sure the size is right. All right, so we're just going to come over here to the old trusty Wilton just have some cheesy Summit soft jaws in them. You're more than welcome to put marks in your spring if you decide to. It's just paint. I don't know that it matters. We already have the beat to death aluminum soft jaws, so we'll just do that. So what's gonna happen is you took this aluminum bushing, pressed it into the spring eyelet. Well, I make these bushings, this eyelet's supposed to be 1 inch. Doesn't mean that it's gonna be 1 inch. Could be a little bit smaller, could be a little bit bigger. So if you imagine that it is in fact a 1 inch ID, I make these bushings 1 inch 8/1000, so that's 8/1000 press. The only reason this even goes in is because the spring eyelet is split, right? So the split allows it to open up. So we've now opened that spring up, pushed those bushings in. What's going to squeeze the ID of the bushing a little bit. So what we're going to go ahead and do, we have reamers. You can just use a 5/8 drill bit, but we already have carbide tip reamers, look like that. Makes a little nicer hole. So these, like I said, we've already done this twice, so these might be fine, but we're going to find out right now. So here's the pin that, there you go. So here's the slider pin that, the separator that comes in the kit. Yeah, you'll notice it doesn't go through. So there's enough deformation in pushing this in that the hole is not 5/8 anymore. I machine those 5/8 on the lathe when I make them. Oh, see, that side goes in. So there you go. There's a little more pinch on this side than there's on that side. This is totally normal because we're working with a leaf spring. Think about it. This is like hot roll bar that they wrap around into a circle. So this is not a machined eyelet, right? So it's not going to be necessarily perfect. So we'll go ahead and run the reamer through this guy. Have to do it a couple of times until that center pin slides through there nice and easy. Okay, so rather than filming 45 seconds of reaming, I just decided to cut it short. And here you go. This is all set up. There's the pin, slides through nice and easy. And it's still not, it's not like it's loose either in there, right? So there's still a good fit. Okay, to the truck. All right, so check it out. So I was just working on this thing, and it is covered in spider webs. I don't know if you can see them, but there are so many. So we'll do the old brake cleaner and a torch deal here, and we'll burn up all these spider webs. Dude, they're just everywhere. Look at that. Ugh, I hate spiders. So many spiders. All right, so this is probably going to seem a little irresponsible, but I bet everybody does this trick. Let's burn some spider webs. It's so effective. Just saying. You don't have to be crazy with it, right? Like just a little bit goes a long way, but whatever spider webs are made out of, turns out it's rather flammable. Kind of exciting. Nobody likes being covered in heebie-jeebie spider webs, right? All right. It's way better. Ooh, set the new housing on fire. So I know I have most definitely covered this before. So the sliders, I need to cover the update on these guys because I got that new press brake and I'm able to make these bodies in one piece. So I was actually able to save like some good weight on it. So you can see that it's all one piece bend now. Still has the locating tabs, and then I changed the locating tabs to 1/8 inch. So I actually was able to save like 1.2 pounds, I think, off the whole assembly, which I feel like is totally worth it with no sacrifice of strength. So here's your chassis. You can leave this bushing in because the bolt that I send, that 9/16 bolt, goes right there. So you're gonna take your slider, slide that guy up and over the top, put that bolt in there. I intentionally... All right, so we got slots in these guys. Here you can see the slots better from that side. So I got a little bit of up and down movement, but almost no forward and back movement. I'm most worried about making sure that I get the forward and back to get that spring to ride in the slider slot where we want it to. But leaving this slot open makes it so we can pull this guy up flat against the frame. So you can already see that we drilled the holes right there. So you're gonna just clamp, put that slider body on, put that bolt in, clamp the slider body flat, drill your 2 holes, and then voila, sliders are installed. There you go, Mike's gonna do a little demo. Yeah, see, just a little clamp like that. Maybe you use 2 of them, maybe you use 1 of them, but you can see that the slider body is flat. Cross this edge, cross that edge, line up the 2 holes in the bottom. What I wanted this to be is that these tabs are just for alignment purposes. That's why I reduced the size from 3/16 to 1/8 inch. I used to have a big long tab on it that was on the outside to designate that it was on the outside. And I just didn't need all the extra weight, didn't need the ridiculous amount of plate going on there. So save the weight, save some welding, save some processing, made an overall nicer part. There's still quite a bit of welding on these things, but they are obviously beautiful. So yeah, that's it. That's both of these guys are already installed, so we're just gonna move on to finishing the rest of this guy. All right, forgive me, there's just all kinds of junk. I'm shooting this video in the shop while we're actively building things, so I would like it to be a little cleaner, but it is what it is. All right, so your Calvert springs are gonna come with these washers on the front spring eyelet. They have like a 3/8 bolt running through them, and then this pin. The pin reduces the front eyelet diameter. It's a 1-inch diameter pin, has a 9/16 hole in it, which is gonna match the size of the front pocket. That pin should slide through there nice and easy. And then you got your rocker pivots, slide over just like that. So what I did was I made the rocker pivots 1/4 inch. I don't believe that they need to be 1/4 inch, but it does 2 things for me. A, my flush mount style rocker pivot is 1/4 inch because I need it to be 1/4 inch to be able to make the geometry work. So rather than having a bunch of individual spacings, I just made it the same. The other cool part about an S10 is that with this 1/4 inch rocker pivot inside of this 3-inch box, you need no washers. There's no extra spacers required. So you can actually see that I've got this one assembled already, and there's no spacers required. This setup is all there. You tighten the bolts down, it's gonna pinch down on that. It's gonna pinch down on that solid pin in the center and then make that whole assembly. These will still pivot, right? You want that to pivot, but it won't squish because you're gonna have that pin in the center. So I'm gonna have my brother, Mike, he's gonna assemble this truck. One side is gonna have the multi-hole guy right here. This side is gonna have the single hole. This is like the street style one. So if you have a small tire or whatever and you don't wanna have some extra clearance, it's gonna have that side on there. So I'm gonna set this thing up on time lapse. We've already installed the 2 sliders and we already have this cross member. So this is that spare tire deal. We've already cut that out. So another cool little thing I figured I'd just cover right away before I start this time lapse. Here is that cross member that goes in here. Like it's a big wide thing. The spare tire fits right here. The reason the holes are where they are is to dodge the weld that's up here on the top of the frame. I just wanted it to be easy for you guys to be able to drill the holes. I didn't want you guys to have to deal with the weld. So that's why the holes are positioned where they are. They're not arbitrary, they're dodging that weld, but that's the function of that. So this has already been cut out. This is actually the same frame or the same truck from when we did this video in the first place, but I wanted to cover some more info since I had more time and more information to cover. So there you go, sliders are installed, frame rail's already cut out. I'm gonna go ahead and set this thing up on time lapse, and Big Hoss is gonna install this guy. So then we'll do some more coverage when we get there. Okay, so I'm back. Shut that time lapse off for a second here. I wanted to cover this. So you can see on the outside of the frame, there's a weld there. It's a weld there, right? And so if you look down inside that hole, there's another weld where that bracket, that whole piece is welded into the frame rail. So what I did, these 2 holes on the top are the factory S10 rivet holes for the early S10. So 83 or whenever they began, I think it's 82, 83, something like that, up until 1997. 1997 is the changeover from when this shock bracket was riveted in, and then they switched in 98 to having this thing that's welded in, this like spare tire thing with the shock mount integrated, and it was welded in. So those are those 2 holes. The hop-up kits are now the same.
They've been the same for a little while, but they're now the same. I did this adjustment, so you have the factory, those 2 rivet holes for the early truck, and then I just made this tab wider to make it so these bolt holes are on the outside of that weld, so you don't have to deal with that weld. So that was my thinking with that. So this way, rather than trying to go in, so you can kind of see that we've left the remnants of that cross member in there. It would be really difficult to get it out. It's going to be a lot of grinding, a lot of cutting. If you want to, absolutely do it. But I figure 95% of people are probably just going to go ahead and leave that cross member behind, especially because really it kind of ties it together. It's welded there, welded there, welded there, right? So these 2 outer holes, 98 and up, these 2 inner holes, you know, this bracket's orientated where the 4 holes are to the top, 2 inner holes are the 97 and newer. These 2 outer holes are 98 and oh, it's got that backwards. Hey, these 2 inner holes are 97 and older. These outer holes are 98 and newer. So there you go. So Mike's got this in so far. I'm gonna say, okay, an engineering point that I totally forgot about, my brother just pointed out. So that hole that's in the frame, that is a hole that's already in the frame. So you can use that hole as the alignment. That is why these, that's why these 2 holes are not exactly the same as these. These have to match the shock mount, whereas these 2 guys are spread to make it so this lands where it needs to land, and then it can pick up that hole. I totally forgot about that. So that hole is already in the frame. So this makes it for these 98 and up trucks are just as easy as the 97 and down trucks, because obviously 97 and down goes there, but 98 and up goes there. So you can see both of those holes. We didn't drill those holes. Those holes are just existing in the frame. We only had to drill these 2 upper ones, and then obviously the one that goes in the front. So I also get questions all the time. What if you get this cross member bolted in and you want to weld this bracket in? Absolutely. There's no reason why you can't. I would tie that in together right nicely if you so desired to. So I have, me personally, have no issues with welding that thing in there. So totally go for it if you'd like to.
All right, so I tighten those bolts down. I have adjusted it with my mellow dead blow. I just went ahead and used the inside of the frame rail to the outside anti-roll bar bracket. In the camera, it looks like it's 7.5, but it's actually like 7 3/8. And so is this side, right? So I'm just making sure that that thing is centered in the frame rail before I tighten the bolts down. I would say use the center of the slot, but depending on where you got the holes drilled, that might not be the same. You can notice that these holes are not, in fact, drilled exactly the same. The crossmember's centered, but those bolts are not. So you can see that the gap on the side of the C bracket is very similar to the gap on the side of this C bracket. This thing is ready to tighten the rest of the bolts down, and we'll just continue on with our assembly. So that's stuff to look for. This just took me maybe 3 or 4 minutes to double check this, bolt these pieces on, and get ready for the next step.
All right, so we've got this thing all the way assembled. I'm gonna do some more videos, but we noticed, so when we originally designed this guy, we had an 8.8 that we designed this thing around, and then we had a quick performance 9-inch housing. So and everything fit super great, the anti-roll bar links and all that stuff. So we've done our own housing now, and as you can see, we're definitely down on the clearance because of the shape of the housing and whatnot. But this is 100% assembled. We've jounced it up and down a bunch of times, and it doesn't actually hit. And actually what's cool to be able to watch.
Yeah, so check it out. So Mike's going to climb up here, do a little jump on it, apply some load. So as you can see, as soon as he puts load on it in compression travel or bump travel, the arm actually rotates over center line and then pulls the link arm away from the back of the housing. So the same thing will happen in extension. The arm is going to travel over center and it's going to move away from the back of the housing. So the actual tightest clearance spot is at ride height or thereabouts with the arm parallel. So it's really cool to be able to actually watch it happen and watch it see. So yeah, anytime the arm is flat, that's the longest position, and then anytime it rotates over center, it's going to shorten up. So the next thing is we're going to zoom in over here on the slider, and you can watch how easily the slider moves back and forth. So The function of a slider is to do nothing more than allow the spring to get longer and shorter. That's how you have suspension travel. You can see the bearing slide along the slot, making it the low friction area, and just lets that spring get longer and shorter with relative ease. So that's the real benefit of a slider over a shackle. So, all right, moving on to the next section of the video. Hope you enjoyed the slow-mos, and let's keep going.
So first things first, these C's is this is the link, or the bracket. This links the upper cross member from frame to frame. So the interior holes, these two holes right here, that is for the 97 and older trucks. You will be able to tell those trucks because this bracket that's in here, 2 rivets here and 2 rivets down lower, those rivets, that's where the that factory bracket is, that's the factory shock mount bracket. So what I ended up doing is, this is a newer truck, maybe it's hard to tell, but this is a 99 or 2000 truck. What ended up happening was we found that this whole bracket system that GM changed it over to was also a part of this whole spare tire deal. Well, they no longer rivet the thing in, they weld it in. So here you could see the weld there and the weld there, and you could see that we just basically cut that bracket out of there, flushed it to the inside of this frame rail. So what I did is, since there's weld, since that bracket is in there, and then also if you look through the bracket right there, come on, focus, there we go. You can see the weld inside of there. So I was just gonna leave these 2 holes, but then you gotta drill through weld, that sucks. So I added these 2 holes to move the bolt holes out of the way of that weld, so it's easy to weld. So 98 and up, you're gonna have this thing that you gotta cut out here. 97 and older, you're gonna have those rivets that you drill out. So those 2 are the upper rivet holes. These 2 are holes that you're gonna have to drill for the newer truck. Moving on to the bottom, there is a factory hole right there that we went ahead and used as part of our engineering to make this C. Well, that's why the 2 holes at the bottom, I've had a couple of guys ask me like, hey, what's the orientation on this bracket? Well, if you flip this guy over and you put the 2 holes on the top and the 4 holes at the bottom, these 2 holes almost line up with those. But what happened was we couldn't do that because I needed to grab that hole and I wanted to keep the slots symmetrical across the bottom. So 4 holes go on the top, 2 holes go on the bottom. This hole is already there for the newer trucks. And then those 2 holes, so this is your register point, and then these 2 holes for the older trucks. So the other thing is, so there's just a little side note. So I've had plenty of people ask me like, what's this measurement? What's going on here? At the end of the day, like, what's going on is if you move this cross member back a half an inch, you're just inducing a slight amount of angle in the anti-roll bar links and a slight amount of angle in the shock. So the amount of angle we could actually calculate, just do the trig on it, but it's not going to significantly change things. So in this application where the link arms are close, so this is my fabricated 9-inch housing, it does fit. It doesn't hit. We've bounced this thing. We've bottomed the suspension out. Those things do not hit. Like, they look close, but they do not hit. What's kind of nice is that as this arm travels up, it actually starts to pull back. I'm gonna post a link or I'm gonna put it in this video so you guys can see it. But you could, in theory, just move this back a little bit. No problem there. I've had lots of guys ask me too, hey man, can I weld this on? 100%. Weld the crap out of it. Like, that's fantastic. You even got all these slots that you can plug weld in. My main takeaway though is mock it up 100% and make sure that everything fits before you go welding these on, because that sucks. Like, that would suck to cut all that back off. So, all right, that's all my tangent about these C brackets. So all the trucks, the C brackets are all the same now. These kits from 82 or 83 or whatever it is through 2002 or 2003, whatever the year of the S10s, all the kits are exactly the same, because of how I re-engineered this C bracket. So then you get 2 of those C brackets. You're gonna get 7/16 hardware to bolt this guy to the frame rail. You've got your clover leaf pattern here, which this bolt pattern is long one way and short the other, so you can only bolt it on one. You could 180 it, but the shocks would be so far away, it would be pretty obvious. But you can only bolt it on one way. And then you're gonna get these, you're gonna get your anti-roll bar bushings with nuts, bolts, and washers. both sides there. Anti-roll bar will be welded, all 100% TIG, 1.5 inch, 3/16 wall DOM steel. There's your top half of all your pieces. So again, 7/16 bolts there, 3/8 bolts there, all your 3/8 bolts, nuts and washers here, Nylox, grade 8, all that. The shock mounts are meant for a 1-inch spacing bearing, which is, this kit is actually built around a Viking D313 part number. That blurb, I've got some more blurb at the end of this video that will be in there about talking about shocks and my thoughts on all that. And yeah, you can kind of take it for what it's worth. And then moving on, so C's, I know I've repeated myself again, C's, upper shock cross member, anti-roll bar, all that. The link arms will come welded, come with all the nuts, bolts, and washers there as well. All right, so now here we are at the middle. Link arm, 4130, 1-inch tubing, 065, Merzier weld bungs. They're local to me and I can't make them for what they make them for, so I just get them from them. They're super nice too, and they weld nice, and everybody down there is awesome. Shout out to Jerry for always taking good care of me. So you got nuts, bolts, washers, all grade 8, rod end supply, rod ends. Those guys always hook it up. So you're gonna get 2 of these link arms, all the bolts and washers. There's a little side profile of the girth of that guy. All the Delrin bushings are all made on the CNC lathe. They're super bitchin', super nice. People ask me a whole bunch about the Delrin, and so I do some off-road stuff, and we use Delrin in the off-road world. It can get squeaky when it's like an off-road truck will end up getting squeaky because it'll be full of dirt, right? Like, and it's just, it'll get squeaky. But in the drag race world and in the street car world, we don't see anywhere near the dirt that the off-road world does. But what's rad about this stuff is it's high molecular weight, self-lubricating plastic. So basically, as you try to apply load to it, it actually gets more slippery, right? So they use Delrin for like boats and conveyor systems where stuff is constantly sliding over it, and they need it to be scratch resistant, wear resistant, and not damage the other part that it's, you know, that it's accompanying. So this is a situation where this aluminum bearing housing, you can beat the death out of this Delrin bushing, press it out of there, press a new one in, boom, you're done, you're ready to go. These bushings I can make for like $15, right? So it's totally worth it. So that's my spiel about Delrin. So link arms, traction bar spring plates. Say you've already got a Calvert system, which is what this side would represent. 3/4 inch bolt. Their bar would be here, their rod end, their bolt. You can order the traction bar spring plate to reflect that, right? So I'm gonna change the website around to reflect being able to order it as a 3/4 inch bolt right here. That way you don't have to change anything, you don't have to worry about it. You obviously can if you'd like to, but you don't need to. So that's gonna be a reflection there. Going to the other side, just as a note, so you're gonna get 2 of these traction bar spring plates, which you have to have. This kit will not work with other traction bar spring plates because you've got that cross member that cross member gusset right there that bolts this lower cross member in place, which is also a part of the kit. So you've got your upper cross member, your C's, anti-roll bar, link arms, lower cross member right there, and then both of your traction bar spring plates. So this traction bar spring plate reflects a assassin bar sized rod end, right? So this is a 3/4 inch stem with a 1/2 inch hole, and then you've got a variety of additional holes. This bracket, this lower hole is a little bit lower than the 3-bolt hole, and this upper hole is a little bit higher. I feel like basically this amount of holes here don't ever get used. It's really from here down that they get used. So, but what I'm gonna do on the website is reflect this, that you can order it with these 1/2 inch holes, or you can order it with those 3/4 holes. If you want to run these 1/2 inch holes with your Calvert system, your existing Calvert system, for $30 each, I can supply you with these rod ends, these chromoly rod ends that will thread into your traction bar, and the bolts to make that work. So for $60, you could upgrade to have those 1/2 inch holes. It's just whichever way you want to go. I'm going to option it out on the website so you can decide yourself. So parts that absolutely come in the kit: 2 of these traction bar spring plates, upper and lower cross members, all the hardware, nuts, bolts, and washers to go to make this thing go together, the link arms, the bushings, and then I forgot, there's no shock mounts on this. So let me pause for a second. I'm gonna put those on. All right, I'm back, put the shock mounts on. Totally forgot, so there's a whole bunch of video that there's no shock mounts on there. So here are the shock mounts that you're gonna get. This is the long style mount. It's gonna come with, you got that base spacer down there. And then I buy these little NAS washers. since the bearing style shock, the little ridge on the bearing is pretty small, I put that little NAS washer in there to make it so it doesn't embed itself in the aluminum. It works super well. You're gonna have a washer there and then a thin Nylock grade 8 nut at the end right there. I started making all the long shock mounts. They're all clear anodized, so they'll last a long time. And I started adding this little boss to the center right there. I don't tap it because I feel like every time I have tapped them, I put the wrong size in for the shock sensor. But there you go. There's a boss with a pre-drilled hole that you could set up and put your shock sensor in there. So, or you could not if you don't need it. So there you go. But there's a provision that's in all of these shock mounts nowadays. So let's just review that a little bit more. These were the holes that I used in the traction bar spring plate to set up the length of the shock. So where it currently is from center to center is 18.5. So that's that D313 shock, 19.75 extended. So if you do some quick math, if the shock will go to 19.75 extended, that means we have 1¼ inches of shock shaft left inside of the can. If you wanted a little less, you can get a little less. If you want a little more, you can get a little more. The bolt spacing on these holes is 5/8 of an inch. So you can move that around 5/8. If you want to know, you can go all the way to the bottom here. This center to this center is 19.75. So that would max the shock out, right? That's as far as that shock will go, that D313 part number. So if you got an existing shock that's 20.5, you could use it in this bottom location. So maybe even 21. It's just like I said, you're just working with how much shock is left available past the spring hanging, right? Like the spring is hanging right now. It's only going to go so much further past this. So, but I also don't want the shock to stop it, right? So that's why this is engineered in such a fashion. So that 19.75 shock, even a 19.5 inch shock, that's going to leave you with that inch and a quarter inside the can. So you're never going to separate out and then top out against the shock. You physically can't because the suspension won't go that far. So there you go. I kind of covered those two pieces. So just the last review piece here, you're going to get both of these C's. You're going to get the upper cross member. You're going to get the anti-roll bar welded out. You're going to get all the fasteners, 7/16 here, 3/8 here. These link arms with 4130 rod ends in them, all the bolts, nuts, bolts, and washers, this chromoly cross member, and 2 of these traction bar spring plates, 2 of these shock mounts. That is a S10 Hop Up suspension kit. That's all the pieces that would come in it for the 1250. If you add the sliders on, obviously you get these beautiful TIG welded sliders, which with any luck, I'm gonna hopefully be doing these guys this same matte or this satin black powder coat, which tell me that is not just, that just looks fantastic. Like, I feel like that looks killer. So I've run into, just a little side note, I know that I've talked to some guys before and they've run into it, other guys have not. So this kit we built off of an 85 truck. Then we got this one and built this kit off of that. And we found that based on how much wear and tear is on this spring bucket, like, because this is a riveted on piece, how much flex is going on here, right? So you can imagine if this frame rail is like, just a little like that, it's gonna narrow the spring width, or if it's a little the opposite way, it will widen the spring width. So the upper cross member has plenty of slot in that C, no issues there. The lower cross member is really dictated by the center to center on the spring. So what I've done is, as of recent, I would send these, or as of recent, all the cross members come with these extra spacers in case you need them. Sometimes you need one spacer, sometimes you need no spacers, sometimes you need both spacers. So you could see that we got one spacer on this side, one spacer on that side. The other truck didn't need them at all. And then, so that's kind of part of the deal. But those spacers will come with your kit. So you could use one, use 2, or use none. It'll just depend on what that spring width really looks like. I have no control of what happens here. So I'm trying to make sure that you're covered, that you have all the options that you need to take care of whatever happens to make this install as smooth and as easy as possible. But these are still old trucks. Like if you have a 1985, that's almost 40 years old, right? Like it's an old vehicle at this point. It could have been used for going jumping. Like it could have been used in some Baja. Who knows what happened to it? That's all just, all joking aside, right? Like, but so I feel like I've got all of the potential issues covered. So here's your other traction bar stuff. This front section of this traction bar runs $400. So you're gonna get both chromoly rod ends, both TIG welded tubes, hex on the side, 4 rocker plates, 2 anti-rotation pins, 4 these spacers, and then all the nuts, bolts, and washers that go along with it. And they could come as either this single hole design, this triple hole design, the 5-hole or multi 5-hole or multi half-inch hole rear bracket, or the 3/4 inch Calvert kind of configuration bracket there. So that covers all of the hop-up kit stuff. And I'm gonna make the website so you're able to just order the front section, the traction bar yourself. You don't have to call me and ask me about it. I've had it on there like that for the longest time, where you have to call. I feel like it'd just be easier if it was an option, and then it's, just less legwork for everybody involved. I'm gonna connect all of these videos together, even the ones that I've already posted in the past, and try to make one inclusive S10 video where I covered everything in it. It might be 40 minutes long, but your information will hopefully be in there. You might have to dig a little bit, but at least it'll be there. So if it's like 2 o'clock in the morning and you're trying to install this thing in your yard, I don't know why you would be doing that, but maybe you are. Maybe you work it during the day and this is what it is, or this is what it is. And you'll have information at your hands. So you can always call me. I'm more than happy to answer any kind of questions that you guys have. So I'm all about it. Just feel free. I'm not scared to answer questions. So that wraps up the S10 hop-up kit. I'm gonna grab a drink because I've been talking forever, and then I'm gonna cover this housing some more and some of the other little pieces, and then hopefully edit this video into something that makes sense. Probably not gonna happen, but we're gonna try anyways.
Okay, so S10's 54.5-inch wheel mount surfaces, the factory width. I've went ahead and chopped an inch off of each side. You can see that there's only so much material left for the housing perch, so that kind of is what it is. The housings are actually set for 52 inches, add brakes, and you're at 52.5, which is an inch off of each side. So I'm just kind of showing you this is the that lower support. I can set this up so this is 100% done. I assume a 3-degree engine transmission angle, 3-degree downhill as viewed from the side, front to back, and that's going to be your pretty typical angle that's mounted in. And so I'm going to aim for a equal opposite angle on the pinion of 3 degrees uphill. Now I'm not going to set it at 3 degrees uphill because it doesn't allow for any slack or bend in the leaf spring. The leaf spring's not a rigid link like a 4-link would be. So my rule of thumb, I go with 2 degrees below the equal opposite line. The relationship between the two U-joints is most important. That's going to give you the best chance for no vibration. So minus 2 degrees under equal opposite, which would put this at 1 degree uphill, and the engine transmission at 3 degrees downhill. So that gives you a little bit of fluff room to be able to make that bend. So I've got this, I've made some fixtures for holding these housing perches so I can get the housing perches perfectly aligned. I've found that the spring center line is 38 1/4 on these trucks. Whether or not yours measures that is, there's some flex and some bend and some, maybe this thing's been off-roaded or whatever, like there could be some issues. So, but 38 1/4 is what I found on this unmolested, in good shape truck. So here you can kind of just see, like, I'm doing a voiceover on this section of the video because I did it so many times I just was mumbling. So I figured I would get some more accurate information once I actually sorted through it. But yeah, you can see that the spring is not a rigid link, right? So there's going to be some deflection in it. The traction bar is going to stop the rotation of the housing, but it's not going to stop the bend of the spring. So you got to have a couple of degrees. I say 2 degrees for something that's street strip, and say 120, 60 foot and slower. If you're going quicker than that, then you may need a little bit more. I feel like if you're at that point where you really understand what you need, then maybe it's better I could just send you a tack welded together piece and then you could finish weld it, or I could send them to you loose, or just get with me and we can kind of do a custom application. I'm not really opposed to that. So yeah, squishy links of leaf springs, that's the nature of the beast. So like I said, there's a super cool Spicer video, 10 out of 10, recommend watching it. That guy goes in depth, which really shows how once the U-joints are out of phase, when they don't have those parallel planes to each other, that elliptical orbit of the U-joint will cause that vibration. So yeah, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of that. I got no issue with welding these housing perches on for you. Like I said, I've got an assumed angle of 3 degrees downhill of the engine transmission. I know I've said it a couple of times, but I figured it's worth repeating. I could put these housing perches on. They'll be at 38 and a quarter. You can measure your truck and let me know if there's some variation or maybe deviation in it. So yeah, that's the overview. That's all the important information. I feel like like I said, I can do this entire assembly just the way you see it with the tabs welded to the housing and the tabs welded to that lower cross member. So you can have a complete ready to go assembly. And I'm working with the powder coat plate, so we can do powder coating as well.